Is your family tree a mystery? Are you fascinated by genealogy? Well, hip hip hooray, let's talk DNA with Julie.
The truth is in your genes.
In Cutoff Genes.
Welcome to Cutoff Genes, the podcast that helps you find your truth using nothing but DNA. I'm Julie Dixon Jackson, and I'm a genetic genealogist, henceforth known as a Gen Genie.
And I am Richard Castle, the co-host and producer of this podcast and jingle writer, singer of that podcast. I'm not a singer, but like I
You're
sing.
a jinger.
I'm a jinger. I'm a projinger.
By the way, you're very self-deprecating. So many people have said, Rich sounds great. What are you talking about?
Oh, yeah. I've always hated my voice. But yeah,
Whatevs.
that's probably why I don't listen to our podcast. No, I do listen to our...
Really?
I mean, I have to listen to our podcast to...
Yeah, because you edit it.
Yeah. I try to edit as much of me out of it. No, I don't mind my speaking voice. It's just when I sing. But
right.
Because you're the singer... What people may not know is that Julie is singing backup in that song. All those oohs and ahs, and
Not just the laugh at the end.
yeah, that's her. She's fantastic.
Oh, you're swell.
So I've got this friend in from out of town.
Do tell.
Well, you know, he's from Boston, where I'm from, and his name, and I don't think he'll mind me saying this because it matters to the story. His name is Steve Perry.
Oh, I loved his work in Journey.
Yes, exactly. He is not that Steve Perry
Oh,
from
darn.
Journey.
I was looking
But he
forward to
does
meeting
share
him.
the name with that very famous singer. And years ago, and we're like talking 30 years ago, Steve and I were roommates. And we would get, this is, before the internet. All right. So,
Ooh, way back in the dark ages.
People would have had to look him up in a phone book or call information to get his name. But we used to get
Oh, is this playing into
messages on our answering machine. Fans of Steve Perry, the singer from Journey, how much they love him, and oh my God, call me back, and all this stuff. And because we lived in Hollywood, had an apartment in Hollywood, and so I'm sure somebody would just from anywhere in the country would call up information and say, yeah, in Hollywood, Steve Perry, and so that they'd get the number and call us. And I used to answer the phone sometimes when people ask for him, and I didn't know if it was his friend or whatever until I realized, oh dear. So it's one of the pitfalls of having a famous name.
That's very funny. I have a very similar story, believe it or not.
Yeah, well, it's almost like what I mentioned, I think it was last week, that Richard Castle is the name of that author, and that somebody had reached out to me and thought I was him, and could I come and speak at some event as the author? And I, had to tell them, no, I am not that person.
Yeah.
And, my website, richardcastle.com, I think most of the people that go there are looking for the guy from the TV show Castle.
Oh, yeah, probably.
Yeah, or unless my listeners out here are going to my website, but I think it's more. For him.
Well, you probably get a lot of people there. So.
Yeah, but the name Richard Castle is not as famous as Steve Perry.
No,
from Journey,
it's not. You want to hear my story about this?
I would love to hear your story.
Okay, so when I first moved in with my now husband in Los Angeles, when I moved back from New York, we lived in Burbank, and we used to get phone calls all the time going, is Jonathan there? It would say,
Jonathan,
yeah,
okay.
Is Jonathan there? I'm like, there's nobody here by that name. And they would do it over and over. And finally one day I put two and two together and realized, so the kid that played Lucky on General Hospital, he was a teenager at the time. He's an adult actor now. He was on Nashville.
Okay.
But there was an article about him in Tiger Beat magazine.
Tiger Beat.
That talked about that he was from Burbank and his father's name was Richard, which is my husband's name. And his name is Jonathan Jackson. My husband's name is Richard Jackson. So we would constantly get phone calls from girls just calling, looking for a Richard Jackson in Burbank. So I got mean.
What did you do, Julie, the belter? What did you do?
I started, like they would call, is Jonathan there? And I would say, oh, you didn't hear? Jonathan died.
Oh, my God, Julie, that's terrible.
I did that a couple times, and
Yeah.
other times I was just, but it was kind of fun to mess with them.
And those are probably even the days before like caller ID and stuff. So you
Exactly.
you didn't know who was calling.
That's why they did. I mean, I have been known to crank call when I was a kid. I did that so much.
Yeah, caller ID was a game changer. It ruined a lot of kids' pranks, didn't it?
Yeah, but kids had nothing else to do after that. That's why they brought in the internet.
I'm still kind of amazed today. Like when I say call up a restaurant and order a pizza, if I'm not ordering online, if I call up and actually, that they just say, can I have your name? And I just say, yeah, Richard. And they say, okay, we'll see you in 10 minutes.
At this address? Yeah.
I know, but I just think the little kid brain in me is going, oh my God, I hope they don't think I'm pranking them. Like I'm ordering a pizza and that I'm not going to show up.
You still think that? They know your address.
They got my phone number. They got my address. Sometimes they call up and they remember my order just from like the phone number.
Yeah.
Isn't that crazy?
It is crazy.
Yeah.
Jeez Louise. All right.
What's going on in DNA news, or do we have some kind of clarifications?
We have no clarifications. Everything has been perfect.
Practically perfect in every way. I can't believe there's been no clarifications from our Julie Andrews episode.
Oh, I bet there will be.
Yeah, Julie will call and tell us.
Hello. I'd just like you to know.
Cease and desist.
By the way, Julie, your audition was terrible. That wasn't, by the way, my impression of Julie Andrews is terrible. I need more time to work on it.
Although when I met you, you played Eliza Doolittle, which was Julie Andrews' most famous role before she did movies.
It's full circle.
Yes, it is.
Everything means something in the universe, you guys. We just have to wait for it to show itself. And on that note, no, I'm kidding. Yeah. All right. So let's talk about, there is a documentary I talked about, the first few weeks that we were doing this. A lady named Sarah Lamb, who was donor conceived, made a documentary called Thank You for Coming.
Yes.
Yes. And I met her at last year's Genealogy Jamboree in Burbank, and we were going to connect, and she was going to be on the show. It never happened. I think she moved, and she's been very busy. But anyway, I've kept up with her, and she just posted the other day that the movie is now available to stream for free.
Oh.
On her website, the Thank You for Coming movie. And when I was speaking to her before, she actually sent me a link to it. So I've watched it, and it's great.
Oh, good.
Yeah, it's really great. So it's called, just go to thankyouforcomingmovie.com, and you can stream it for free. And it's fascinating.
Maybe we could put the link on the Facebook page as well.
That's exactly what I'm going to do.
Good.
Good thinking, Richard.
It was nice of her to share that with
yes,
us.
It was. All right. Here's something that came from the Australian newspaper, The Age. It's citing a British study that I found interesting. Said the era of genomic medicine is allowing doctors to screen rising numbers for preventative action against diseases such as cancer and Alzheimer's. About 220,000 such tests are carried out by the NHS in England and Scotland each year. The NHS, for those of you who don't know, is the National Health Service.
I knew that.
Yes.
I have some British friends.
There you go.
They're very protective of their NHS.
They should be. I wish we had the NHS. Anyway, and it says that hospitals are being left in an ethical quandary as they are uncovering some awkward family secrets. Mm-hmm. It's currently estimated that around 4% of the population are unaware, 4%, that the man they call their father is not their true biological relative.
Yeah, well.
Yeah. So it's not without controversy, whoever this person is, who I haven't named, warned. If you look at people who have had genetic tests within families for reasons other than trying to work out paternity, for 1 in 10 people, your dad isn't who you think it is. 1 in 10
1 in 10
people.
Oh
in
my God.
England, anyway.
Yeah.
He said this was the dilemma. Are we going to tell people that's not your dad, or are we going to keep that information to ourselves? I don't think that would be acceptable ethically. Last year, the Human Fertility and Embryology Authority called on DNA testing websites to warn people of the risk uncovering traumatic family secrets and underlying health problems. They do that. People just don't always read it. It's actually something that is, before people take an ancestry DNA test, I think on all the companies, they say, be prepared for unexpected results.
Yeah. It's like a little trigger warning.
Yeah.
You might find out something you don't want to know.
Right. So, yeah.
Be ready for it.
Be prepared.
Be prepared.
Be prepared.
Why can't the English learn to be proper parents.
It's a My Fair Lady kind of episode.
It is. It's all about My Fair Lady.
So I find it interesting, though, that they're saying it's an ethical quandary for them that man is not your dad. I think if they ask, then that's something, then they should tell them. But if that is something that comes up in somebody's DNA and that's not why they were taking the DNA, I think unless they're asked, it shouldn't be offered unless it has to do with inheriting something directly from your father.
Right.
And you know what I'm saying?
Right.
But if it's just something that the father is neither here nor there, it's just they're looking not what is in their lineage, but what they have.
I agree with that. I don't think, if I go in for a blood test, to find out if I have some kind of disease, that I don't want someone necessarily to tell me, oh, by the way, your dad isn't your dad.
Well, and here's the thing. Do they have the dad's sample as well? How do they know what he's...
That's a good question. Well, maybe because we're talking about the National Health Service, right?
Well, maybe they have everybody's DNA.
So perhaps it's all in a database,
That would be awesome. I don't think it is.
No, I don't think it is either. I don't think it would be that modern, right? Where everything would be connected. It's all like Kaiser, Kaiser. I go to Kaiser, and
I do too.
And I kind of love the fact that when I go, no matter what doctor I see, they can. And this is not an advertisement for Kaiser, because Lord knows they have problems too.
Yeah.
But I love that I can go to a doctor that is not my doctor, and they have all my records. They can pull them up electronically, and it's so easy, But anyway, the point is, I don't think the NHS is that modern that they would have the father's DNA information in there,
right? Or the lineage,
right?
At least, I mean, what are they looking at that they can say, oh, this person? I don't know.
It has to be the fact that if your father doesn't have that gene, right? Well, then how would they know that?
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah,
unless
it's a
the
quandary.
father was a patient, in which case they would know.
Right. It's more something that I think, with a consumer DNA testing, you're going to look at your relatives.
Right.
And if you look at your relatives, it'll soon become obvious.
Yes.
For some people, there are still some people, by the way, that it's not obvious to at all.
Well, honestly, when I've told people about this podcast and we talk about, and everyone's kind of heard about the ancestry and 23andMe and all of that, almost to a person, they are thinking of it in terms of finding out your, your where you came from,
yep.
Your ethnicity. That would be the reason to test, not necessarily to find any kind of relatives. That everything they think they know about their family tree is, that's set in stone. And they're not looking for more information on that. They're looking for their ethnicity, which is funny because that becomes...
And that's also the least accurate of everything.
Yeah, and who cares about your ethnicity once you find out that your father's not your father? You're like, oh my God.
Yeah.
Who cares if I'm only 63% Irish?
Right. Yeah, it's interesting, but what struck me the most about that was that 1 in 10 people have misattributed. Remember a few weeks ago I was talking about the one case where who I believed was the father of my client, 2 of his daughters had DNA tested and he wasn't their father, but he is the father of my client.
Yes.
That's progressing. I found the mother, or I'd already found the mother, but family has finally revealed that she is indeed the mother, and they've spoken, and it's all good.
Oh, good.
So that's good. And she also confirmed that the father is indeed who we think it is.
Oh, good.
There is a concern. So with these daughters, who are such loving daughters, they're such a loving family, and they just want to protect him. He's older. He's in early stages of dementia. They certainly don't want to tell him that he is not their father.
Right.
If he doesn't know, and he probably doesn't. And they're trying to decide about how they're going to introduce this new daughter into his life.
Or whether they should if she's already...
If he's already, right.
Yeah.
Right, because they're thinking he may not even remember the mother.
Talk about an ethical situation. What do you do there?
Yeah, so they're all dealing with it themselves. The 2 daughters have now connected with each other, so they're going to work it out for themselves. So I don't have to be a go-between anymore, which is a relief.
Yeah, I bet.
A little bit. I want to help as much as I can, and I always do. But once I connect them to each other, then
it's sort
I'm
of
done.
like your job is done here.
Exactly.
You're like Mary Poppins taking off with your
with my umbrella,
with your DNA umbrella,
and my feet in first position. Yeah,
first position.
That's a ballet reference.
I know it is.
Yeah.
I just can't believe I never thought of it that way. Like she's dancing up there. Oh my God.
Right. So, but think about that, guys. It happens. And if you're not prepared, I have people who, as much as they want to help me, they refuse to take a DNA test. Mm-hmm. As much as I say the government can get your DNA if they want it. Mm-hmm. That's a line that they will not cross.
Is it because of a paranoia kind of thing? Or?
Yeah.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah. They think that they don't trust anybody, and they think that once it's out there, and there may be merit to that because we don't know what can happen in the future.
This is true.
With the DNA, I just happen to be of the school of I don't care. So
you don't care. You care. You are much more. I don't want to say Pollyanna. That's not true. You're not Pollyanna. But
No,
I
I'm
think.
not Pollyanna.
But you're much more thinking that people are trying to do good with it rather than, and you'd like to believe that most of it is to do good.
Which is interesting because there was a time when I thought that most people were essentially good. I'm long past that.
But maybe in the DNA world, they're still trying to help people because you're coming from it from a point of view.
I'm coming from it, right, and I'm
know?
coming from a point of view of truth, and it doesn't have to be bad. It's all about healing.
Yeah, I mean, the truth is the truth. It's how you deal with it, right?
Yes, and there's lots of ways to deal with it. There's lots of...
including denial.
Including denial. Therapy is something... but you'd be amazing once secrets are out, how freeing they are and how things change in your life. I'm just gonna put that out there.
Oh, then in that case, I'm going to tell you all my secrets right on the break.
Great, let's hear them.
If you're enjoying Cutoff Genes, please subscribe, rate, and review. Now, back to Julie and me.
All right, we're back.
Hello.
Hello.
What did you think of all those secrets I told?
I'm reeling.
I said there's some doozies in there.
I need to do it again so I can turn on my tape recorder.
But now that they're out, it's so freeing.
Don't you feel like lighter?
Yeah. Well, I have a slow metabolism, so I don't know that I'll feel that light. Right now, I just feel guilt for telling them. But you know what? I'm sure later, like in a couple of years of therapy, I will feel much better and lighter.
It's going to be a couple years, but you know what? Good things happen over. Wait, what is it? Baby steps? Never mind. Okay, let's move on.
Good things happen over cocktails. That's when
what I was going for.
That's when the secrets come out.
Right, and then the next day you regret everything.
Yes. Or you just forget that you said it, and then you don't have to regret anything.
And you don't know how it got out there. All right. Hey, do you know who Florence Crittenton was?
Was she related to Florence Nightingale?
No, because people aren't related by their first names.
Is it a character played by Julie Andrews, going along with our theme?
No, but she could.
No. She played Gertrude somebody in Star. Remember the movie Star? It was terrible. Terrible movie.
No.
Yeah.
You know what my favorite Julie Andrews movie is?
What is?
Victor Victoria.
Wow. Well, she's good in that, too.
Oh, she's brilliant.
Yeah.
All right, moving on. Who is Florence Crittenton? So when I read The Girls Who Went Away, who I continue to recommend to adoptees and biological families because it's so important for people to know that they're not alone in this. I speak to so many biological mothers who are just riddled with shame still, and because they think they're the only ones who went through this. And I think it's to remain on a theme, freeing.
Isn't that amazing that you can feel so alone, and that yet it's something that
happened over and over and over and over.
Yeah.
And people don't realize
It's
that
so
because
common.
they've kept it to themselves for so long.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, if you can spout off a statistic just about like 1 in 10 people, their father is not their father, that means that 10% of that population of England or whatever it was, has the same issue. And everyone that finds out probably thinks, I'm the only one.
They do. That's
or
why
feels
we have,
like they're the only one.
That's why
even.
we have support groups.
Yes.
Right. So, in the book, a lot of times women talked about they were sent to a Florence Crittenton home. So I decided Florence Crittenton.
Yeah, I am assuming then that's a home for unwed mothers.
Exactly.
Okay.
Well, that's where in the 50s and 60s that it was so many of them talked about. I was like, who was Florence Crittenton? So, of course, I Googled it because I wanted to know. All right?
Yes.
So,
I want to know now.
All right. I know.
I don't have to Google it because I got you, Julie.
Because you have me. I am a walking Google.
She's the Joogle. And she's not even Jewish.
It's a miracle.
I'm going to start that. We're going to have a Google that's Jewish, a Joogle. Yeah. You can look up all the Jewish history.
It's like that Jewish dating service, J-Date.
Is there really one, J-Date?
Yes, you've never heard of that?
No, I'm not on that stuff.
There used to be in the 80s. I'm sorry to digress. In the 80s, one of my best friends was Jewish, and she used to go to these Jewish singles meetings.
Yes.
And I would tag along with her because, hey, why not? I love Jewish guys.
Yeah,
I'm just saying, I'm attracted to Jewish men. And I would go, and more often than not, people would like come and talk to us. They'd talk to her, then look at me and say, "You're not Jewish."
Really?
How obvious is it? I know lots of blonde Jews. Is that not a good way to say that? You're going to edit that out?
No, I just think it might have been the way that you walked in dressed as one of the characters from Fiddler on the Roof, and they're like, a Jewish person would never do that.
That's trying way too hard.
She would walk in with her hands up going, the daughters, tradition.
I don't know, but it was apparently very obvious.
And when some Jewish guy asked you, so where are you from? And you'd sing, far from the home I love.
Either that or Queens. Anywho, Florence Crittenton.
Yes, who was not Jewish.
Who was, well, as far as we know. I don't know. So it all started with a little girl called Florence. Florence, affectionately known as Flossie, was born to Charles and Josephine Crittenton in 1877. She died at age 5, so she really had nothing to do with these homes.
Oh.
Of scarlet fever and passed away. Her parents were grief-stricken, and following a spiritual awakening, Charles Crittenton was compelled to act and leave a legacy in his daughter's name that would provide hope, compassion, and dignity to young women and their children. Charles traveled the country in a railroad car and donated $500 to any group willing to set up an organization to help women and children. Of the original 78 agencies, 26 remain today, serving the individual needs of their communities. So the homes originally served prostitutes and unwed pregnant women whom the organization aimed to lift up through evangelical efforts. The missions so now we know that Crittenton was not Jewish.
Right.
Right.
It was
evangelical.
It had a religious overtone.
Yes, they had a spiritual awakening.
Okay.
The mission's earliest leaders believed keeping mothers and babies together helped accomplish this goal. In the 30s and 40s, as more young women became pregnant out of wedlock, social workers began to classify them as neurotic instead of as fallen women or morally bankrupt, according to Fessler's book. Anne Fessler, who wrote The Girls Who Went Away. By the 1950s, professionals said that the problem of unwed mothers was a psychological one, making them unfit to raise children.
Unfit in terms of like psychological because they got pregnant?
Well, I think that was the path that led to that. Oh. Right. So by the 1950s, the Florence Crittenton Association of America, the Salvation Army Catholic Charities, and other organizations operated more than 200 maternity homes in 44 states, although the homes housed about 25,000 young women a year. In the 50s and 60s, many Crittenton and other maternity homes changed from refuges that offered sympathy and support to places where embarrassed middle-class parents would secretly hide their pregnant daughters who were pressured to give up their babies for adoption.
That's so fascinating that it went from something where they were
keeping them together,
yes, to the exact opposite. Wow,
Isn't it? With the introduction of the birth control pill, the legalization of abortion, and a lessening of the stigma of unwed motherhood, the homes began closing.
Well, they didn't have anybody to shame anymore.
Exactly. An estimated 1.5 million unwed mothers in the U.S. were forced to have their babies and give them up for adoption in the 2 decades before Roe versus Wade made abortion legal in 1973, according to Fessler's book. Mostly white middle-class teens and young women were systematically shamed, hidden in maternity homes, and then coerced into handing over their children to adoption agencies without being informed of their legal rights. I've talked about that before.
Yes.
They were told of nothing of the good that could come from this. They were not told of their rights, of the government programs that could have helped them.
It was more about coercion
And telling them to forget about it, which is why when I speak to biological mothers now, they often say, I was told that nobody would be able to find me and that to forget about it. And so I tried to forget about it and I never told anyone. And so then there's the added extra of they were told to keep it themselves. So now, even if they want to accept these biological children into their lives, they first have to break it to their families, which they're terrified of.
Right. And quite frankly, break it to themselves that
Yes.
break themselves of the thought that this was a shameful...
That this was an awful time. Well, it was an awful time for them.
No, but it was shameful. Like if you're told that from the beginning and you live with that for so many years, to try to reconcile that's not how it is anymore. It doesn't have to be that way,
Right.
I guess.
Right.
I think I might have talked about this early on in the podcast, but I had a friend whose older sister got pregnant. She was, raised in a religious home, and she got pregnant while she was in high school.
Mm-hmm.
And he told me that his parents sent her to another state
Mm-hmm.
where she had the baby, and then she came back without the baby, and they never spoke of it.
Right.
And then years later, when she married and had her baby with her husband, her parents were just overjoyed by their first grandchild, and she freaked out and said, "It's not your first grandchild. Your first grandchild, you made me give up." And she, and it was years later.
Yeah.
And she was so hurt by it. And I think she was hurt by the attitude, the hypocrisy
Yes.
of her parents could forget
Yes.
that they had
And they
a grandchild.
expected her to forget and not feel an emotional connection to
Right.
this person that grew inside of her.
Right. So now I'm wondering if it was a Florence Kittredge Crittenton.
Yeah.
Home.
Well, I think in general, I don't think it's just the Florence Crittenton homes. It's just the name that I heard so much, and I wanted to know who she was. And
Right.
went
You
into
always
this
heard
rabbit
about
hole.
it like a home for unwed mothers.
Right. My mother went to a home for unwed mothers.
Yes.
And
That was like the generic version. If you
Exactly.
were really, really ritzy,
the
you'd
Florence
go to
Crittenton home.
you went to if you're a label queen, you went
Yeah.
to
Yeah. They had a couple quotes from women who had stuff to say about it. This woman stayed at the Florence Crittenton home in Washington, D.C. for almost 3 months. She called the home a shame-filled prison where mail was read and censored. No visitors were allowed, and caseworkers practiced mind control to get the teens to relinquish their babies to couples. The home closed in 1982.
Wow.
The parents of these young women were ashamed and embarrassed about their daughter's pregnancy, a typical reaction from most families at the time. Sending a pregnant daughter to a maternity home was a way for parents to hide their shame. Let's round this out.
Yes.
Let's think positive things about Florence Crittenton now. The Florence Crittenton home has grown and become an active advocate for women to keep their babies.
Good, because that was the original intent, wasn't it?
Exactly. They provide them the resources and skills they need, and more importantly, the confidence they need to be a mother. They do also support those women who decide on adoption, but it is so nice that they provide support structure for those women who can keep their children. It takes in girls and or women who they refer to as at the margin of the American dream. Interesting, they still talk about the American dream, meaning women who need a support system to be successful. So they've come full circle.
It sounds like it. And what I like about that also is that they sort of acknowledge that
Times have changed.
Well, that and the fact that giving up your baby for adoption is not necessarily the wrong choice. I mean, but it's only when it's coerced is it the wrong choice.
Exactly, and that happened a lot. So, hey, if anybody has any connections to Anne Fessler, the writer of the book, The Girls Who Went Away, could you find out for me how I can get them in bulk? Because I'm thinking if I could afford it, I would like to have a supply of these books so I can send them along with introduction letters to biological mothers.
Oh, wow. That's great. What a great idea.
I would love to be able to do that. I think it's so important that because I hear so much, the first thing that they say to me is, I was told to forget about this. I was told that, this would never happen.
Maybe you could reach out to the publisher if you can't reach out. I mean, it'd probably be easy to find out, how to get in touch with her nowadays.
Yeah.
You don't have to call up information in Hollywood and say, can I speak with Steve Perry, please? Got that number? Bringing it full circle, people.
I love what you did there.
Thank you.
Let's take a break.
Thank you for listening to Cutoff Jeans with Julie Dixon-Jackson and Richard Castle. That's me.
Hi, guys. This week's Epic Odyssey is not DNA related, but it's very much NPE related. I want you to hear from Kulap Vilaysack, who is an actress, comedian, writer, showrunner, a fixture in the alternative comedy world. And she has made a film called Origin Story. And it's something that every NPE should see, I believe. And I was so happy and lucky to get an interview with her. And I wanted you guys to hear it and hear her insight. And also, I want you guys to see the movie. So have a listen, and I'll see you on the other side. Kulap, I have to tell you, this interview is a long time coming for me because I first heard your story when I was listening to Never Not Funny, which is my all-time favorite podcast. And you started telling the story about how you found out that you were an MPE and that you were following it along.
Wait, tell me what that acronym is.
An MPE is a misattributed parentage event.
Woo!
Or NPE is what the original one was, and it was like not parent expected, or no, it's very strange. But it's very, very common nowadays with DNA testing.
Yes. This is what I met with someone recently who was telling me that she had a different but similar situation, and that there's a lot of Facebook groups, and that a lot of it has come forth through your DNA test, your 24andMe, your Ancestry.com stuff.
Right, 23andMe. But anyway.
23andMe. Sorry, I wanted one more.
You have one more, strange things would happen.
That's true.
So let us know what happened.
I found out my dad wasn't my real dad in a really, really tough way. It was when I was 14 years old. My parents have a really difficult relationship. Their marriage was one that was filled with a lot of arguments, and that's putting it lightly. And so on this evening, they're fighting about something that I don't remember now. And I am in their room because that's where our family computer was set up. And my mom retreats to her room and starts venting to me about my dad. And now my dad is somebody who I have historically gotten along better with. I thought I was most like him. I looked like him personality-wise. We were a better fit. My mom and I have a very complicated relationship that had been really filled with strife.
Yeah.
So when she goes after him, in that moment, I start defending him. And she says, "Why are you defending him? He's not your real dad."
Wow. So tell me what, do you remember viscerally how you felt at that moment?
At that moment, I wasn't sure if my mom was telling the truth. My mom has a very fluid relationship with the food. So at that moment, I was with her, and I'm trying to discern what she's doing. Obviously she's weaponizing her words. Yeah. But I don't realize till later that she's weaponizing the truth. I get an inkling because she seemed a little frightened after she said it. Oh. But I had turned my heel soon after to go talk to my dad. And honestly, at that time, expecting him to say Mom is just like shooting off her mouth again. Like it's not. But I don't remember he verbally acknowledged it or verbally said that was true. I don't remember that, but I just knew from whatever his reaction was, that it was the truth.
Okay. So, and how old were you at the time?
I was 14 years old.
Wow. That's a tough time. All right.
Yeah.
So, life went on, obviously. And what made you decide that you needed to get to the bottom of this and find out who your father was?
Let's see. So kind of cut to almost 20 years later. And my relationship with my mom had gotten even worse. Her addiction to gambling. My parents' marriage was further strained. And I think everything was sort of at its like fever pitch. I think at this time my parents were finally certainly separated. And then for my part, I had my first pregnancy and my first miscarriage. And that really was such a blow. It was so emotionally upsetting. It was, I think I finally realized that I definitely wanted to be a mom after years of just being really afraid of continuing patterns of both physical and mental abuse, not wanting to inflict that type of pain upon an innocent kid. Although wishing that mine didn't do it to me, wishing that the past was different, wishing that I had parents, and especially a mother who could mother me the way that I needed to be mothered.
So then was there a moment when you said, I got to do this?
The miscarriage, yeah.
Okay. That makes sense. All right. So then you started on this journey and you made a film about it.
Yes.
Which is called Origin Story. And when you were making it, you were on, I think it was like 3 years ago, I guess. You were on a podcast. And of course, this story speaks to me because I have a similar story. And I have been so excited to finally get to see this, which I did finally. You guys, it's airing on Amazon Prime. Is that right?
That's right. Yeah.
So great. And every NPE that listens to this podcast, guys, watch it. It's so fantastic. Okay. First of all, let's talk about how you came up with the title Origin Story and how you kind of featured that theme in the movie or the documentary.
So I love the medium of graphic novels and comic books, the story, the art of storytelling, the actual artwork or illustrations, and a huge part of a superhero's tale is their origin story. And so that seems sort of a natural place to be inspired by.
Yeah, it's brilliant, actually. Who was your animator or your artist who did the animation? Or I'm sorry if I'm using the incorrect term.
I mean, it's a term that I think most of us would be most familiar. It's actually it's actually artwork, and we use movement in editing.
Yeah.
And the reason for that is twofold. Is one, using two-dimensional art is most like a graphic novel or a comic book.
Right.
And secondly, it is much more expensive to actually animate.
Right. Now, this wasn't existing artwork, though, was it?
No, it was not. And I had most of the art comes from the very talented Kevin Dalton. Okay. For the origin story that opens the film, my parents escaped from Laos, and a lot of the art comes from Kevin. My cousin Noor Sanavangsai, he did my mom's storybook origin story, And he did, anytime there was a card that translated someone's name, that was him. And when we're in Laos, that's his brushwork that names the towns and the provinces and the cities.
Gotcha.
In terms of one other artist we worked with was Will Heiler, and he did all the motion graphics. So the family tree was him, the maps. He took care of like all of the texting and the emails, any sort of motion graphic thing. Will took care of that.
Very cool. Okay, so what was the process when you started filming? You decided you wanted to do this, and you decided that you were going to film it.
Yeah.
Which is very daring. And I have to comment, I was fascinated with not fascinated, I was thrilled that you kept so much of your raw emotion in it, to show that it's not rainbows and sunshine. And, you had a couple of meltdowns that were pretty epic.
Yeah.
Which I completely related to.
Well, there's two things.
Okay.
Because I found out the way I found out, it really made me distrust my parents and myself, because there was this question of, don't you remember? And I didn't remember. And with full compassion myself, how could I? It wouldn't have made sense, right?
Wait a minute, go back. There was a question of, don't you remember? What do you mean by that?
Don't you remember your father?
Oh,
No.
People were saying that to you?
My mom did.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
But even my biological father does in the film. Don't you remember? I used to carry you around.
How old were you when he left?
Who knows? But it wouldn't have made sense to me to kind of have a certain man be there when I've only known for most of my life and known in Pang as my dad, right? So it was about remembering, right? And so if I don't trust myself and I don't trust my parents to tell the truth, and I don't trust my memory and my experience of the truth, then having a camera which will, with its cold stare, will keep record of it. It will be proof.
Yeah.
And I was never going to do this without a camera for that reason.
That's good.
Secondly, if I'm going to do this, then we have to go there.
Right.
Because now what's the point? If we were going to sanitize it, if I was going to sanitize it, if I was going to keep it on the surface, then we could just business as usual. Another 20 years could pass, and we wouldn't get any further.
Right. So, who did you reach out to first to get the background, to find out who he actually was?
I interviewed his dad first.
Okay, that was the interview that was in the film.
Yeah.
Okay. And so you went home with a camera crew. How many in your crew?
The first time I went to Minnesota was with myself, June Diane Raphael, and we met two strangers at the time who were listeners of my podcast, Who Charted, who offered to operate the camera. First, Dan Schneidkraut, he reached out to me, and then his friend Andrew Martin, he also essentially volunteered.
Were they locals?
Yeah.
That's so cool.
Yeah, it was amazing.
I love that.
Later on, I hired, after we kind of did initial interviews and stuff, I was like, okay, I think we're going to move forward, and there's more to kind of dive into. And that's when I hired, met, became really great friends with my DP, Jonathan Nicholas.
Okay. And he was the one that went to Laos with you?
That's right, along with Erica Kraus, my producer.
Okay, so just the three of you?
Just the three of us. And then in Laos, there was, we hired a local crew.
So I notice that, not unlike me, you're a comedian, and you tend to deal with uncomfortable truths with humor.
Yeah.
that, you know, which I think all of us do, that's those of us who, you know, go to humor for comfort. I think that makes sense. And I was struck by that in the movie, how you were, when you met your dad for the first time, well, he has this infectious smile, first of all.
Right.
You know, and it was a very light conversation, and, you know, he was telling you stuff that was kind of slightly off color and nothing that you should be proud of, I guess. I don't know. But you were laughing about it and kind of letting him off the hook about it. But at the same time, when you weren't with him, you were like, yeah, he's going to ask me for money at some point.
Yeah, totally.
I love that. But I won't do spoilers, but you're pretty intuitive. Yeah. Right. Since then, I won't do spoilers, but, you know, it's one of those things where it is what it is, and you have your answers.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like initially I was hoping for, you know, I was looking for more concise answers.
Yeah.
And more like fill in the blank. Yes or no. Not yes, no, and but. Just give me, that's not how people work. That's not how people talk about experiences that happened 20, 30, 40 years ago, right?
Yeah,
Like,
it's really hard to get a succinct truth, isn't it?
Yes, it's imbued with life experiences. It's imbued with how they view themselves and how they relate to their past and who they've come and the choices that they. It's so murky and so, you know, so that hope and that desire was something that I had to have to like let go of.
So
and really find that there's truth. The truth, you know, with quotations, is the Venn diagram between me, all three of my parents, and then there's the truth somewhere where we cross over.
Absolutely. But needless to say, you have your answer. Do you feel peace now?
I feel free, yeah. I feel peace and I feel free. And really it's like, look, the thing of it all is, the easy tagline is to say like, oh yeah, the movie is about me going to Laos and meeting the biological father I never knew.
Right.
But the truth of it, to me at least, I know this movie's like a song, and after I put it out, it's whoever sees it, it's theirs. But that it really was me finding peace with my relationship with my mom.
Yeah.
It's more about me and my mom.
Yes.
And my relationship with myself than it is about my birth father.
That makes perfect sense. That's really good. Speaking of that, how is your relationship with your mom?
It's great. It's been really great. She just, we had a wonderful trip that ended yesterday.
So that's good. I feel like there's maybe been some healing with mom.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's great. How did she feel watching herself in the film?
I don't know. You'll have to ask her.
Oh, there's been nothing said about it?
Not really. I was like, are you okay? Do you like it? You know?
Yeah. I love that she allowed you to use the footage with her. And I also love the fact that she's a flawed human, but super real once you get to the truth.
Yeah.
You know, and she's been through her own trials, obviously. They escaped from Laos.
And here's the thing to say about my mom is that my hunch and my gut tells me that there has been more trials and traumas that she hasn't talked about yet. But I can almost guarantee that there has been more.
Yeah.
What happened to Laos before she came here, you know.
Absolutely. That makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have a friend who's a filmmaker that told me that if you want to get someone to tell the truth, just put a camera in front of them and start asking them questions. And for some reason, even though it's instinctually it would be opposite, people will say things that you never knew.
Truly, my fear initially was like, I'm the only performer in my family. Will my parents will my family, my sisters included, will they give me more than just one-word answers?
Yeah.
And it did feel like once we got going, people needed to testify and or confess. It was amazing. It is exactly as your friend said.
Yeah. I want to watch it again now. Just because there were so many moments that were so raw and so uncomfortable. Because you just didn't know how anybody was going to react to anything, which is like the best kind of reality TV, but that's not contrived, you know. I can't recommend it enough, and I'm so happy I got to finally see it. Tell the listeners again where they can stream the movie.
Right now you can see it on Amazon, both Amazon and Amazon Prime. And then soon, I believe in September, we're going to roll out onto iTunes or whatever, Apple TV or whatever it's going to be called.
Sure.
And then I believe Google Play as well.
Great. All right. Kulap Vilaysack, thank you so much.
Thank you, Julie,
for talking to me. And I can't wait for the listeners to be able to see the film. So, and I'll post a link to it on the Facebook page. Thank you so much. Okay, there you have it. Thank you so much, Kulap Vilaysack, for talking to me, taking the time out of your day to do that. Really appreciate it. I'm glad you guys got to hear what Kulap had to say. Go see the film. You can follow Kulap on Twitter at Kulap. That's Kulap. You can also go to the web page for the film, which is originstorydoc.com. I will also put a link to it in the Facebook group. All right. So we're out of here. Hey, Richard's not here, so I'm going to tell you that you can go to his webpage, richardcastle.com. As you know, along with being producer of this very podcast, he is also a writer, composer, musician, and you can follow him at Twitter at Castle Songs. Follow me on Twitter at Jules Jackson with 2 O's. Follow the podcast at Cutoff Jeans Pod. Join the Facebook page. Email me at julesjackson@cutoffjeans.com. And as always, the truth is in your jeans.